This is the Corner Boxing Podcast for the league. So, put your gloves up.
Touching a lot to bands, you gotta wash your hands. I'm cooking up high demand, customers coming in fast. You don't wanna throw the hands, I got the gloves, you don't wanna dance.
Hey guys, welcome to the 5th episode of the Corner Boxing Podcast with Flea. I shocked the world. The biggest upset in boxing history, Mike Tyson and James Buster Douglas. And of course, like always, I hope you and all of your family members are doing well. And this is part 2 of a 3-part series. And I know that I told you guys that this was going to be a 2-part series, but due to the richness of the material and the volume of history that we are discussing, I simply had to make this a 3-part series. I also like to say that on part 1, I told you guys that Mike Tyson had 21 straight knockouts out of 22 fights. Well, while reviewing my notes, I realized that I spoke in error. And Mike Tyson actually had 19 straight knockouts out of 20 fights, and 12 of those came in the first round. I want to clear that up, and now that we did, we can jump on into part 2, and don't you forget, if you like this podcast, please press that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. And with that being said, let's get into it.
I never look at it as he's my trainer, my manager. He's like my father.
I often say to him, you know, I owe you a lot. He doesn't know what I mean, but I'm going to tell him now what I mean. If he weren't here, I probably wouldn't be alive today. And I will stay alive, and I will watch him become a success.
Now, one of the big misconceptions about Mike Tyson's career is many people tend to think that it went right down the drain after Cus D'Amato passed away on November 4th, 1985, but that's not true. Mike's career was just beginning to take off. As a matter of fact, by the time Cus D'Amato passed away, he had actually put together a really good stable, and Kevin Rooney was his lead trainer.
I don't consider anyone is better than me. Now, how can I say that? I say that because I got an education. I was around Cus D'Amato, who was head and shoulders above everybody. There wasn't a greater trainer, teacher, or manager than Cus.
So, by the time Cus did pass away, with the exception of Cus being gone, the rest of the team was still intact. Mike had his longtime corner man and trainer, Kevin Rooney, who had been with him since 1982, just after Mike had won the Junior Olympics. And he still had his good friend, Jim Jacob, the one person that most people thought could keep Mike in check after Cus passed away. He was still on good terms at the time with his manager, Bill Clayton, who had made him a multi-millionaire by the age of 21. Now, Kevin Rooney was a former professional fighter who was brought up under Cus D'Amato, and he won the 1975 New York City Golden Glove Championship. Kevin started his professional boxing career in 1979, and that career would come to an end on the night of July 31st, 1982, due to a stiff right hand from Alexis O'Gray.
Down goes Rooney. A tremendous straight right hand by Alexis Arguello, dropping Rooney right above our broadcast position. He will not get up. It is all over. A second round KO.
Now, if you're an old boxing fan, I'm sure you remember the wars between Aaron Pryor and Alexis Arguello. As a professional fighter, Kevin's corner man was none other than Teddy Atlas. Teddy Atlas was another former professional fighter who was being brought up under Cus D'Amato and was actually his lead trainer.
Teddy Atlas was the trainer at the time.
I was thinking I double the champ up and slip back. Yeah, very good. We wanted to see the spirit of Mike. He's coming towards this, prospect. He was 12 years old. He was 190 pounds.
Now, Cus D'Amato lead Teddy Atlas as his head trainer in 1982 after the incident between Teddy Atlas and Mike Tyson, where Teddy pulled a gun on Mike Tyson. And Teddy has repeatedly said that this altercation revolved around an incident between Mike Tyson and Teddy's niece.
First, Tyson was thinking that he could get away with
more and more improper behavior because of what he did to an 11-year-old girl in my family. You know, I put the gun in his ear, and he didn't seem like he understood it at that moment. So I pulled it out of his ear and I pulled the trigger, missing him on purpose.
Tyson says that the altercation between him and Atlas was due to a contract dispute.
One very serious situation happened with trainer Teddy Atlas that wound up with him holding a loaded gun to your head and pulling back the trigger.
Well, that's not true. How do you know if that's true or not?
No, that's what he had said.
You made a statement like you know it was true.
Oh, no, okay, yeah, that's what he had said.
No, what was wrong with Teddy? That's not true. Teddy did do that, but it wasn't necessarily because I flirted with his niece or touched her butt or something. Teddy wanted me to go back with him. He was leaving Cuss, he left, and I wasn't leaving Cuss, and he wanted me to come back with him. You know, and that's really basically what happened. I wasn't leaving to go with him, leave Cuss and go to New York and train, whatever the situation was. Do you think he's a tough guy? Do you really think, see, I know he talks tough, but you think that he would ever come in my face and say that he's a tough guy, man to me? It sounds like he would, because he got everybody fooled that he's a tough guy, but no, he won't.
But for whatever the reason, Kevin Rooney was going to be Mike Tyson's lead trainer. And after Cus D'Amato passed away, he would lead Mike Tyson on the most incredible run to the championship in boxing history. Mike fought 15 times in the first year. In a matter of weeks after Mike debuted and knocked out Hector Mercedes, on April 10th, he was back in the ring where he demolished Trent Singleton.
Tyson's professional debut, hard to believe it's just about a month ago. We're back in Albany for his second professional fight. Trent Singleton in the blue with a gold trim. We're in round one. Well, we didn't get much of a chance to see Tyson.
And just a few weeks later in May, he was at it again.
Mandatory 8, early in the fourth. Can Tyson finish this? I think so. That's enough.
Now on June 20th, just a few weeks after that, Mike Tyson released a vicious attack on Ricardo Spain.
3 fights, 3 wins, 2 inside. The eyes of the giveaway. Oh, the legs have gone. This is all over. Yes, it is.
Mike just continued on beating her down month after month.
Undefeated in 6 consecutive bouts, all by knockout. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Tyson.
Kennedy is a boxer, but gets knocked down with the first left hook he takes. Look at the power.
Dips under, throws this left hook. That's a nice move. Is that a Joe Frazier left hook? It really is. And you know, Tyson, you have to like how poised he is right here. He is picking his shots well.
This one could be over. It is.
You pointed it out because down he goes.
It was the right hand, right there. 23-pound weight advantage, and he put it all there.
And when Mike Tyson fought Johnny Long, I'll never forget it. I was living in a beach house in Marina, California, in the beautiful Monterey Peninsula, and I was thinking, this is going to be a real test for this Mike Tyson.
I think that I can box as good as he can, and I'll keep him in the middle of the ring, and I can punch if not better than Tyson.
Will this be a win that puts Donnie Long back into the heavyweight picture?
This will be a win to let everybody know that Donnie Long is back.
19 years of age. Long is 27.
Oh, wow. Well, that was quick.
Tyson putting him down here early in the first. Frank Cappuccino looking on closely. You see Long holding those gloves up to say he's all right, but is he? Here comes Tyson.
Well, he nearly sent Long out of the ring with that left hook.
Tyson. Oh, Long is down. Second time.
As bad as I've ever seen Donnie Long look, but give Tyson credit. That's it. Wow.
The left hand puts him down. He collapses, and this one is over as the doctors rush into the ring.
It's a big win to let everybody know that Donnie Long is back.
After the way Mike took Long out, I knew he was going to be a champion. And he had an incredible knockout streak of 19 straight knockouts, 12 coming in the first round, and that came to an end on May 3rd, 1986, when he ran into Quick Tillis. But don't be fooled by that, because Mike did dominate the fight pretty much, although Tillis did have a few moments in the fight. Now, this winning streak would give Mike a shot at the WBC title in 1986 against Trevor Berbick. Now, I give Berbick a lot of credit because Berbick came in there and he fought for his title. He didn't come in there and lay down. He wasn't afraid of Tyson. He stood up and he went for it. Now, he got knocked out in the second round. But I give him a lot of credit for the effort.
This is round 2, the WBC Heavyweight Championship of the world. Trevor Berbick and Mike Tyson. Tyson goes to work right away, and he gets Trevor in trouble, and he's down. It happened to 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, and he says he's then he goes to the body downstairs, catches him with the right hand upstairs, bangs the body, wow, that uppercut is Tyson, catches him with the right left hook, and he goes down. Should be able to get up from this. His legs may be shut. They are. And Trevor Berbick falls back and home. I don't know if he's going to be able to continue. He's got the
Mike would continue these winning ways, and he would go on to fight for the WBA and IBF championships of the world, defeating both James Bone Crusher Smith and Tony Tucker. Now, I think Bone Crusher did a lot of holding and a lot of grabbing and a lot of just trying to survive opposed to going in there and trying to take Mike out like I thought he would. You know, Tyson's going to try his intimidation. A lot of people disagreed, but I thought this was a knockdown. Whether you call it a flash knockdown or not, pro boxing rules, anytime you get punched and your knee or your ass hit the ground, that should be registered as a knockdown. Now, Tony Tucker, on the other hand, I give him credit as well because, like Berbick, Tony Tucker came out trying to win this fight. Now, he put up a good fight. He just wasn't good enough to beat Mike Tyson. A young Mike Tyson would fall in love with a young, beautiful Robin Givens. And Mike would marry Robin and Ruth Givens, her mother, on February 7, 1988.
Why you wanna go and start these problems? I thought you'd be the one who wanna solve them, not cause them. Why you picking out to try and leave me?
Hey, champ, let's get the lead out.
Yes, dear. From what I could see, Mike really did love Robin, but there was those in his camp that was very skeptical of her intentions.
Peyton hasn't called. He's called the house a number of times. He suggested to Michael that I should back off. I could tell you that a person very close to us, he offered him money, $50,000, to help us get a divorce. He said he'd stop at nothing less than our getting a divorce. This is like something out of Dynasty. People have no idea what's going on. And I believe that the press has become a victim.
The Barbara Walters interview, Mike had no idea he was going to get blindsided like that. Mike thought they was going on that interview to profess their love for one another due to all the negative attention their relationship was drawn, and she got on there and opened up a can of whoop ass on Mike.
Accustomed to being treated poorly. So every day, behavior that you would normally not accept becomes everyday behavior. And I woke up and I said, I don't deserve this. I never had this in my life before, and I'm not going to tolerate this.
Mike could only sit there and listen. There was nothing he could do because then it would have made everything true. You could just see the fire in his eyes. It was sad. It was hard to watch. It was brutal.
True. Extremely volatile temper. I think people see that about every 3 months. He's got a side to him that's scary. Michael is intimidating, to say the least. I think that there's a time when he cannot control his temper, and that's frightening.
Now, I don't know if Mike was actually whooping Robin's ass the way he was whooping everybody else's ass or not, but the way she set this up was a chess move. She made it look violent, scary, and brutal, and of course he couldn't touch after this, and I think it was within a week or two after that where Robin and Ruth Gibbons filed for their divorce from Mike Tyson. And of course, Robin would later deny that she was awarded over $10 million in the settlement. Now, many people in the boxing circle believe that it was Robin Gibbons alone who was responsible for the firing of Mike's good friend, Steve Lott. Steve Lott has been a major figure in boxing for over 3 decades. He has managed many prominent fighters, 5 world champions, including Edwin Rosario, Wilfred Benitez, and of course Mike Tyson. He is the CEO of Boxing Hall of Fame in Las Vegas, and he is credited for having the largest collection of unique boxing memorabilia in the entire world with over 20,000 pieces. And he is also the executive producer of Big Fight Incorporated. And he has been around Cuss D'Amato and Mike from back in the day when Mike was known as Kid Dynamite before he was known as Iron Mike Tyson. Now, I read a really interesting article on DogHouseBoxing.com that was written by a guy by the name of Robert Brown back on May 11, 2013, where he did an interview with Steve Lott. And Steve had a lot of interesting things to say. Sometimes I learn a lot from what people say, and I learn a lot more from what they don't say. I was a little bit taken back by the fact that Steve seemed to be a little bit annoyed at the fact that Robert asked him if Cuss D'Amato had set any social barriers for Mike Tyson. And he responded to that by saying that Mike Tyson was doing commercials on major networks in 1986, 87, and 88, and that the major networks usually didn't have a punk care for their sponsors.
Power now. Challenge.
辛口生
Centauri Drive. Let's shot of the 2 champs together.
Diet Pepsi into the ring. Taste for yourself.
Hey, champ, let's get the lead out.
Yes, dear.
Well, usually. That means that sometimes they do. Plus, I didn't understand that because he wasn't asked if Mike was doing commercials. He asked if Mike had any social barriers set forth for him by Cuss D'Amato. He also talked about Mike being a spokesperson for the NYC Police Department, the FBI, and the DEA. But again, that's not answering the question. Snitch. Robert pressed the issue of education, which I like, and Steve said, look, Mike had problems as a juvenile in school. Did Cuss do anything to help further his education outside the ring? And Steve replied to that was, Mike Tyson was doing fine until Don King came along, and then he had problems. Again, he totally evaded that question, which could kind of make you wonder if Cuss actually didn't address some of these issues. Now, I do feel that Robert asked Steve a really profound question when he asked Steve, did Cuss D'Amato make a mistake by relieving Teddy Atlas as Mike Tyson's lead trainer and giving that position to Kevin Rooney in 1982 after the incident where Mike and Teddy revolving around the circumstances with Teddy Atlas' niece, and by doing so, did this make Mike Tyson feel that he was untouchable? But first of all, he didn't say it didn't happen or what are you talking about. He said it had no negative effect. So this could lead me to think that maybe there is some truth to what Teddy is saying, that there was an incident with his niece. Now, Robert also asked Steve about the damage that the Barbara Walters interview had done to Mike, and he said that the damage had already been done because a week later, Mike Tyson signed a contract with Don King.
Going back to recapture the heavyweight crown, our son, our brother, our friend.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Corner Boxing Podcast with Flea. Now make sure you switch over to episode 6 so you can get part 3 and the final conclusion of I Shocked the World. Till next time, please be safe and of course be happy. And remember, always keep your gloves up and your chin down when you